She was just driving home late at night, her little boy asleep in the back seat, when flashing lights pulled her into a checkpoint. What started as a simple stop turned into a confrontation with a racist officer, and what he asked her that night would change everything. But before I continue this story, tell me in the comments where in the world you're watching from, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you won't miss tomorrow's powerful story. Now let's begin. Rain hammered County Route 17 as Tasha Monroe nursed her dented Corolla toward a midnight checkpoint. Wipers ticked like metronomes. In the back seat, 7-year-old Jaden slept curled around his superhero backpack, an inhaler clattering in the cup holder. Payday was still 2 shifts away. The last ER bill glared from the visor like a threat. Cones narrowed traffic beneath harsh floodlights. Officers waved cars through with bored rhythm until a tall sergeant stepped into Tasha's lane and lifted a gloved palm. His badge read Harlan, but people in Westbridge called him Hawk. He looked carved from the rain. "License and registration," he said. Tasha kept both hands high on the wheel. "Evening, officer. Rear taillight's dead. Inspection expires next week." His flashlight raked across her face, then into the back seat. It paused on Jaden and the inhaler. "Step out of the vehicle. It's raining and my son, now." She climbed out, flats filling with cold water. Another officer, a young woman with freckles and worried eyes, stood a few yards off. Hawk walked a slow circle around the Corolla. "This car looks overloaded," he said. "Just laundry," Tasha answered. "Thursday is wash day." He opened the rear door. Jaden blinked awake. "Mom?" "Stay buckled, baby," she said, keeping her voice steady. Hawk leaned in, sniffing judgment from fabric. "Ever miss a court date, Miss Monroe?" "No." He took her license and stalked to his cruiser. The radio crackled. Rain hissed. The freckled officer edged closer. "Hold tight, ma'am. He's particular." Minutes stretched. A tow truck rattled past, dragging a busted motorcycle. Jaden coughed twice, a thin whistling sound that struck Tasha's spine. Hawk returned with a clipboard. "Failure to appear on a parking citation last winter," he said. "Expired inspection. Broken taillight. That's 3. I called the clerk's office. I never got through. Not my concern." He pointed at a painted stripe by the lights. "Stand there. Touch your nose. Follow my finger. Recite J to P." She complied through chattering teeth. He stepped so close she smelled coffee. "Address, Linden Row, apartment 2B. Who lives there?" "Me and my son." "No boyfriend? Husband?" "No." Figures. Lightning whitened the world. When it faded, the clouds hung low like old grudges. The freckled officer shifted again. "Sarge, maybe a fix-it." "Back to your post, Lane," Harlan snapped. Lane flinched and obeyed. Tasha swallowed heat. She had seen decent people fold under bad ones before. "Pop the trunk," Hawk ordered. She did. Laundry bags slumped beside a toolkit, and leaky detergent. He sifted through socks, lifted a child's sneaker, then tossed it aside with theatrical boredom. "When was this car last searched?" he asked. "Never, and you don't have a warrant." He produced a printed sheet in plastic. "State authorization for sobriety and safety compliance. Vehicles are subject to brief inspection. That isn't a warrant. It's close enough." He moved toward the rear door again. Jaden watched him, breathing faster, little chest fluttering. Tasha pointed at the inhaler. "He needs 2 puffs." "After I'm done," Hawk said. "Please," she said, louder. Jaden wheezed. Officer Lane bit her lip. "Sarge, asthma escalates." Hawk ignored her, rifling through Jaden's backpack. He flipped a stickered notebook, frowned at rocket doodles, then dropped it back. Jaden's eyes shone with fear. "Mom?" "It's okay," Tasha said, not believing it. Deep breaths. A white SUV suddenly hydroplaned past the first cone, fishtailing toward the checkpoint like a skidding bull. Someone blew a whistle. Lane sprinted. Tasha froze. Hawk shoved Tasha backward and slashed his flashlight through the rain. "Brake!" The SUV shrieked to a stop 3 feet from Tasha's rear door, engine smoking. A college kid stared through the windshield, petrified. While Hawk pounded the window, Tasha dove for the inhaler, pressed it to Jaden's lips, counted steady. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. Again. His whistle softened. Hawk spun back, eyes narrowed. He noticed Jaden's calmer breaths, then Tasha's outstretched arm shielding the boy. Something unreadable flickered behind his stare. Sirens wailed in the distance. The line of taillights crawled. Rain thinned to silver mist. Hawk stood very still, like a statue deciding whether to draw a sword. He spoke finally, voice lower. "Miss Monroe, before I decide what happens next, do you have any last request?" The words landed strange, too formal, too final. Last wish at a checkpoint. She pictured an impound lot swallowing her car, a courtroom she couldn't miss again, a boy coughing through a night with no heat because a tow bill ate the electric money. She squared her shoulders. "Yes," she said. "Let me change the bulb right now. You document it, write the fix-it, and I'll take my son home. You can escort us if you need proof. Hawk's mouth twitched. Rain ticked off his hat brim. Patient, counting, relentless. And if I don't? Then you'll detain a mother over a bulb while ignoring a dangerous driver you haven't processed yet, she said, nodding at the steaming SUV. You'll keep a sick child from treatment, and your body cam will explain it to a judge. Lane's eyes flicked to his chest, where a red light pulsed. Hawk tapped the camera once, as if reminded it existed. He said, "Step aside," and opened Tasha's trunk again. She pulled the toolkit free, popped the taillight panel with a screwdriver, twisted the burnt bulb out, and fitted the new one with shaking hands. Lane cupped a flashlight to help without being told. The bulb seated, bright and honest. Hawk stared at the red glow like it had challenged him personally. "Inspection? I have an appointment Monday," Tasha said, showing a confirmation text on her cracked screen. Rain dotted it like Braille. A call crackled through his radio. "Domestic disturbance 3 miles east." Hawk answered, eyes never leaving Tasha. "Copy," he said, standing by. He returned the license, then held it back a second longer so she had to tug. "You still missed court," he said. "That doesn't vanish because you're handy with a screwdriver." "I'll clear it tomorrow before work," she said. "I'll bring Jaden's medical notes if they need context." "Excuses," he said automatically, but the steel had dulled. He looked at Jaden again, then at Lane, then at the SUV driver wiping tears into his sleeve. The checkpoint smelled of wet asphalt and overheated brakes. Thunder rolled far off like conversation behind a wall. Hawk slid a citation pad from his pocket, then paused. "Why's your kid carry a backpack at midnight?" "Because we left my sister's after dinner." Then the ER pharmacy argued about his refill. "Then my second job called," Tasha said. "He fell asleep before I could move the bag." Hawk clicked his pen, wrote carefully, tore off a yellow slip and handed it over. "Fix it for inspection. Bulb verified replaced. Appear within 30 days. Clear the old citation in 72 hours. He paused. "Do you understand?" "Yes." He nodded once, then added, "Lights on in rain. Buckle him tight. Do not stop until you're home." Lane blinked. Tasha blinked. The order sounded like protection disguised as command. She slid behind the wheel, squeezed Jaden's hand, started the engine. Hawk stepped back into the wash of the floodlights, unreadable again. As she eased forward, he raised 2 fingers to Lane, and the young officer jogged alongside as an escort through the maze of cones. At the final cone, Lane tapped the roof and whispered, "Drive safe." Tasha nodded, throat tight, and rolled into the night, mind racing with the strangest thing she'd heard all evening, a last request at a roadblock, spoken by a man who looked like he never granted any. Headlights tunneled through the wet dark as Tasha merged off Route 17. Jaden dozed again, the inhaler balanced in his palm like a tiny shield. The dash clock blinked 12:41. Wipers carved ticking arcs. Behind them, blue and white filled the mirror. The checkpoint cruiser had slipped in 2 cars back. Not sirens, just a shadow that refused to fall away. "Mom?" Jaden murmured. "Almost home," she said. "Tell Rocketman to hold the fort till we park." He smiled without opening his eyes. The smile made her brave enough to pass the shuttered car wash and turn under the brittle light of AM/PM Quick Mart. A flickering sign promised Safi ice air. She needed 2 of the 3. The Corolla limped beside an air pump, tire silent but sagging like a tired lung. She'd felt the drag since leaving her sister's. Adrenaline had kept it from mattering. Now the rain softened and the hiss of the compressor sat there like invitation. The cruiser glided into the far corner and idled. Through the curtain of drizzle, Tasha saw Sergeant Harlan's silhouette at the wheel, hat brim low. He didn't move. He just existed like a rule. Tasha left the engine running for heat, slipped out, and fed quarters to the pump. The hose was stiff and cold. Her fingers were stiffer. As she crouched, a pickup rolled up on the other side of the island. A man in a grease-streaked uniform leaned out. Diacon's towel was stitched over his chest. "You sure you want to put air in that?" he drawled. "Sidewalls chewed. Won't hold." "It'll hold tonight," she said, fitting the nozzle. The gauge crept from 23 to 30. The tire rose obediently. Diacon clucked his tongue, eyes sliding past her to the cruiser. "Sarge says the word, I can have you on a hook in 90 seconds. Discount for friends of the department." "I'm not your customer," she said. "You are if the state says so." He lobbed a business card. It skidded through a puddle and stuck to her shoe. The passenger door of the cruiser opened. Officer Lane stepped out with a paper cup and the protective look of someone approaching a stray dog that might actually be a deer. "Ma'am, need a hand?" "I'm okay," Tasha said, but her voice wobbled. Lane glanced at Deacon. The towman raised both hands like a comedian who just told a joke that wasn't one. The air hose snapped. a brittle crack like chalk breaking. Tasha jerked her hand back. A thin cut opened along her knuckle. Lane was at her side instantly with a small roll of gauze from her belt pouch. Sit. I got it. She wrapped the finger with efficient pressure, then finished filling the tire herself. Thank you, Tasha said. Not a problem. Your kid doing better. He's sleeping. Tasha glanced at the rear seat. Jaden's lashes lay against his cheeks. The mirror sucked her eyes to the cruiser's driver. Harlan still hadn't moved. The Quick Mart's door chimed. A woman with a purple umbrella jogged out with a steaming cup and a phone pressed to her ear. She wore scrubs and sneakers and a name badge turned backward. She looked at the cruiser, then Tasha, then the tow truck, and mouthed, "You good?" Tasha shrugged a maybe. The woman angled her phone, and in one fluid motion switched to camera. The red circle lit. Live. Deacon noticed. "Lady, you got permission to film? In a public lot?" she said without looking away. "I got weather rights and rain talent." Harlan finally emerged. He didn't hurry, didn't posture. He simply stood under the forecourt light as if installed there. Rain traced his jawline and vanished under the collar. He took in the live phone, Lane's bandage, Deacon's predatory grin, and Tasha's hands on the compressor like a scene he'd seen before with different names. He said, "Monroe, your tire is now legal. Your light functions. Your citation stands. Go home." Deacon scoffed. "At least write the impound for that inspection, Sarge." Lane's head snapped. "It's Monday on the text." "Texts don't pass emissions," Deacon said. "I got a kid needs braces. The county has needs too." Harlan looked at him so long the towman's grin wilted. "You run patrol assignments now, Deacon?" "Just trying to help," Deacon muttered. "Help by leaving." Harlan's voice didn't rise, but the way he folded his hands behind his belt dared anyone to argue. Deacon thought about the cruiser, the camera, the rain. He backed the truck off with a squeal, glancing at Tasha as if to memorize a plate for later. The nurse with the purple umbrella, she drifted closer, kept streaming. "Night audit at Mercy," she said brightly to no one, and everyone. "Saw a mom pumping air with a cop watching like a gargoyle. Figured I'd flex my First Amendment cardio." Harlan shifted his attention to her. "You're obstructing. I'm recording weather," she replied, "and conduct." Tasha felt the scene straining again, a cable pulled taut. She stepped between the airs and heat and people and said, "Sergeant, you asked me for a last request back there. I've got another." The phrase felt ridiculous, like story language, but it bought focus. Harlan's eyes narrowed cautiously. "I'm listening. Let us follow you to Linden Row," she said. "You clear the block, we go inside. No more night vendors tagging along." She didn't look toward where Deacon had parked across the street at the burger joint window, but she didn't have to. Lane flicked a glance at her sergeant. It wasn't mutiny, more like curiosity mocking authority's ear. The nurse narrated softly to her stream. "Mom makes reasonable ask. Stakes include small child and predatory tow guy. Storm continues." Harlan's jaw worked. "I am not a shuttle service." "No," Tasha said. "You're the guy who didn't tow the asthma kid tonight. See the distance through." Rain thudded louder, then eased like a drummer deciding whether to take a solo. Harlan finally jerked his chin toward the cruiser. "In front of me. Right-hand lane. If you drift, I stop you. If you run a sign, I cite you. If you so much as wave at Deacon, I add reckless endangerment." "Copy," she said. Lane smiled, quick and small, like a moth deciding light is safe. The nurse lowered her phone, whispered, "I'll swing behind you two. Eyes matter," and slid into a faded Honda with a hospital parking sticker. They rolled. The convoy looked absurd, a dented Corolla leading, a cruiser pacing, a nurse's Honda anchoring, Deacon drifting beyond the glow like a hungry planet. Linden Row rose from the damp by the river, brick stoops, bicycle carcasses chained to railings, a mural of a heron over a storm drain. Tasha's building's security light blinked out on every other cycle. The Corolla chugged into a spot near the door. Harlan nose-inched the cruiser to block the aisle like a shield. Lane hopped out and scanned the shadows with her hand on her radio. Jaden stirred. "We home?" "We are," Tasha said. She gathered backpack, inhaler, purse, laundry bag, dignity. When she opened the back door, cold kissed the boy's cheeks. He shivered awake and then brightened. "Race you to the stairs." "No racing," she and Harlan said at the same time for different reasons. A thin figure peeled from the stoop. Mr. Alvarez from 3A, night shift janitor at the county complex, raised a palm. "Thought you were getting towed, Tosh." Deacon circled twice. "Predator deterred," the nurse said, popping her umbrella as a small victory flag. She looked at Harlan. "You walk them in?" "My jurisdiction ends at the curb," he said. "Fear doesn't," Lane murmured. Harlan almost smiled. Almost. 5 minutes. They moved like a small unit. Lane up front, Tasha and Jaden in the middle, Harlan bringing the rear with eyes up. Mr. Alvarez carried the laundry bag, The stairwell smelled of damp paint and somebody's burnt onions. On the second landing, the bulb had blown again. Jaden stopped at the dark like it might bark. Tasha squeezed his shoulder. It's the same steps as daylight. Count them. 1, 2, 3, 4. He tripped on 5 and giggled, which somehow broke the hallway's spell. At 2B, the door stuck as always. She hip-bumped it, and the apartment breathed them in. Couch thrifted from the parish hall, a box fan, 2 plants that refused to die. The power strip glowed a red dot of welcome. She flicked on the lamp with the cracked shade. Warmth found them. Harlan stayed in the frame, not crossing the threshold. Rain threaded down the back of his jacket and dripped onto the mat. You got locks? 2, she said, working them to show they worked. 3, if you count Mr. Alvarez. Count me twice, the older man said cheerfully from the stairwell. Lane crouched to high-five Jaden. You did good, Captain Inhaler. He beamed. I'm Rocket Man. Even better. The nurse peeked in around Harlan. I'm bringing you a spare tire from Mercy tomorrow, she said. Our shuttle got totaled last month. They salvaged 2 donuts. I snagged a claim. I can't pay you, Tasha said, embarrassed and grateful, battling it out. You can sign for delivery, the nurse said. 1 flourish counts as money tonight. Silence settled, comfortable as a blanket for 10 seconds. Then the radio on Harlan's vest rasped. Unit 12, respond South Pier. Assault in progress, possible weapon. The moment snapped. He touched the radio without breaking eye contact with Tasha. 12 copies. He hesitated the smallest fraction of a breath. You cleared your request. She nodded. Thank you. He turned, started down the hall, then stopped and looked back. Jaden's backpack, he said. Teach him to keep the inhaler in the outside pocket. Seconds matter. It wasn't tender, it was procedural, but it landed like care disguised as policy. He vanished down the stairwell, boots sounding a short, purposeful rhythm. Lane jogged after him with a quick wave. The nurse saluted with her umbrella and ghosted away toward the Honda. Mr. Alvarez lingered just long enough to make sure Tasha's deadbolt thunked home. Inside, Tasha sagged onto the couch while Jaden built a blanket fort with battlefield intensity. She watched the door, as if the night could leak through the keyhole, and tried to name the thing vibrating under her ribs. Not safety, that was too big. Not victory, that was too loud. Motion flickered across the window, Deacon's truck passing slow, then accelerating when a spotlight washed the lot. The cruiser had reappeared at the corner, easing by like a patrol pattern. Harlan didn't look up, but the message bled through. Not tonight. Tasha set a pot of water to boil for noodles, washed the blood from her knuckle, and taped the citation to the fridge with a magnet that said, "Try again tomorrow." She stared at the yellow square until the letters blurred. Last wish. She didn't know what the man meant. She only knew that when she asked again, he'd granted it. From the fort, Jaden's voice drifted, small and sure. Mom, the rocket made it home. It did, she said, voice steady. It really did. Outside, the rain quit. The building clicked and sighed. Somewhere downriver, a horn moaned once. And on the other side of town, Unit 12's siren rose and fell and rose again, carrying whatever came next toward a different set of lights. Morning sunlight pried through the blinds like it had something to prove. Tasha's eyes fluttered open on the couch, stiff neck bent sideways. Jaden was still inside his blanket fort, breathing soft and steady, plastic rockets sticking out like a sentinel. The yellow citation on the fridge glared at her, bright, official, immovable. She dragged herself up, set water for instant coffee, and replayed the night in her head. Hawk's voice, flat, sharp, commanding, still echoed. Do you have a last request? Who even said that at a traffic stop? By 9, she had Jaden dressed, inhaler pocketed, and both of them hustling toward the courthouse to clear the parking citation. The city blocks bustled, buses sighing at curbs, men hawking umbrellas in sunshine, women weaving through crosswalks with bags of groceries. Inside the courthouse, fluorescent lights hummed like trapped bees. A tired clerk in a gray sweater scanned her license. Unpaid ticket, bench warrant suspended, $95 fee. Tasha slid crumpled bills across, nearly half her rent. The clerk stamped the paper without looking at her. Cleared. She tucked the receipt into her wallet, feeling like she'd traded breath for paper. On their way out, she spotted Officer Lane near the entrance, uniform crisp, radio clipped to her shoulder. Lane smiled when she saw them. Miss Monroe, she said, stepping closer. How's Rocket Man? Jaden grinned. I'm good. I counted all the courthouse steps. 42. Lane chuckled. Strong lungs today. Yep. He puffed his chest, proud. Tasha whispered. Thank you for last night. You didn't have to help, but you did. Lane's face darkened slightly. You should know. Sergeant Harlan filed the report himself. He didn't mention the tow truck or the delay. Just said he oversaw compliance and you fixed the bulb. That's unusual for him. Unusual how? He doesn't usually give second chances. He doesn't usually pause. Lane tilted her head. He watched you work that bulb like it mattered more than it should have. Then he asked internal if there were other complaints pending. That's not his style. Before Tasha could reply, a commotion stirred at the metal detectors. A man in a cheap suit shouted at security about police brutality. 2 bailiffs moved in, their radios chirping. The lobby thickened with tension. Lane's radio crackled. Unit 12, respond. Downtown demonstration forming. Possible escalation. Lane cursed softly. That's me. Stay safe, Ms. Monroe. She jogged off, leaving Tasha with a knot of questions. Back outside, Jaden tugged her sleeve. Mom, why did the officer help us if he doesn't usually? She knelt, brushing his hair back. Maybe he remembered you're just a kid who needs to breathe. Sometimes people see things different for a minute. Jaden nodded like it made sense. Maybe he saw my rocket. By late afternoon, the neighborhood buzzed. News vans idled near the courthouse steps. Reporters spoke into cameras about checkpoint practices, civil rights, oversight committees. Tasha walked faster, clutching Jaden's hand. She wanted no part of microphones. At the corner near her apartment, she froze. Hawk's cruiser sat idling across from the bodega. He leaned against the hood, arms folded, cap shadowing his eyes. Mom, Jaden whispered, it's him. Keep walking, she murmured, heart thudding. But Hawk pushed off the hood and approached. Miss Monroe. His voice was the same low gravel as last night, but there was no mockery. She stopped, bracing. Do I have another citation already? No. He studied her, raincoat gone, sunlight cutting sharper lines across his face. You cleared the warrant this morning. I checked. Her stomach dropped. You checked. Had to make sure you weren't ducking it. You didn't. He paused, eyes flicking to Jaden. Kid okay? He's fine. Jaden piped up, fearless. I'm Rocket Man. For a split second, something close to amusement flickered across Hawk's mouth. Then it was gone. There's chatter, Hawk said. People are circling that checkpoint incident. Lane filed supplemental notes. Somebody streamed part of it. The nurse, Tasha whispered. Yeah, purple umbrella. He exhaled like smoke. Council wants statements. Oversight wants to review procedure. They'll drag your name in. I didn't ask to be dragged anywhere, she said, anger edging her voice. Neither did I, Hawk replied evenly. But here we are. Silence sat heavy between them, traffic blaring a block away. Finally, Tasha asked, why did you say it like that last night? About a last request? Hawk's jaw ticked. Because checkpoints can turn. Driver panics. Gun goes off. 1 minute you're arguing about a bulb. Next minute someone's bleeding out. So I ask. Most people want to call someone, or smoke one last cigarette. You wanted to fix something. Her chest tightened, and if I hadn't? He didn't answer. Just looked past her to the mural of the heron on the storm drain. Jaden tugged her hand. Mom, can we go inside? I'm hungry. She nodded, unlocking the building. Hawk stepped back, giving space, but his eyes followed until the door closed. Upstairs, she watched from the window as his cruiser pulled away. Questions clawed at her. What game was he playing? Why did he keep appearing? And why, in spite of everything, had he granted not one but 2 of her last requests? That night, as Jaden slept under his rocket blanket, Tasha sat at the kitchen table, citation receipt under her palm, and whispered to the quiet apartment, what happens when he asks again? Because deep down she knew the story with Hawk wasn't over. 2 nights later, Tasha's apartment hummed with the static tension of bad weather. Rain slapped the windows again, almost as if the storm from the checkpoint had circled back. Jaden's rocket fort sprawled across the living room, but he was curled on the couch watching cartoons, inhaler close. Tasha stirred pasta on the stove, listening for every cough. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She let it ring twice, then answered. Ms. Monroe. The voice was unmistakable. Harlan's. Her hand tightened on the counter. How did you get my number? I ran your plate, he said matter-of-factly. Standard procedure. That's not procedure, she snapped. That's stalking. He ignored the word. You need to stay home tonight. There's chatter about retaliation. TAW operators, couple hotheads, maybe more. Deacon's been bragging. The name froze her blood. Why tell me? Aren't they your friends? I don't have friends, he said. I have problems, and one of them is that video making rounds. So that was it. Damage control. I don't need your protection, she said, voice trembling. Maybe not, he replied, but your kid does. Click. The line went dead. She sank into a chair, pulse racing. A knock thudded at the door almost immediately. She flinched, whispering, God, not tonight. It was Mr. Alvarez from 3A. Tasha, he said, eyes wide. 2 trucks rolled by slow, not Amazon, not FedEx. Deacon's crew. You should. He stopped when a siren wailed far off, then cut abruptly. He lowered his voice. You should be careful. She nodded, locking the door after him. Jaden looked up, sensing the air change. Mom? Just neighbors, she said, forcing calm, but her stomach knotted tighter. By 9 p.m. the parking lot below filled with shadows. She parted the curtain slightly. 3 men loitered near the dumpster, hoodies up despite the rain. A tow truck idled by the curb, hazard lights blinking like a dare. Then headlights washed the lot. Hawk's cruiser rolled in slow, spotlight swiveling. The men scattered like startled birds. The tow truck peeled away, tires shrieking. Jaden ran to the window. It's him again. Tasha pulled him back. Stay down. Her phone buzzed with a text this time. Request granted. Stay inside. She stared at the words, heart hammering. Last request. Always the same phrase. The next morning she found a note slipped under her door. Block letters, impersonal. Oversight hearing. City Hall. 10 a.m. Tuesday. You will be called. She almost tore it up, but something in her gut said she couldn't ignore it. Tuesday arrived like a storm without rain. Reporters crowded City Hall steps, microphones bristling. Inside, the chamber smelled of old wood and ambition. Council members lined the dais. Officers filled one side, civilians the other. Tasha sat clutching her purse, Jaden at daycare, her heart a steady drum. Lane caught her eye across the room, offering a small nod of encouragement. Hawk sat stone-faced at the end of the officer's bench, cap on his knee. The chairwoman spoke sharply. We are here regarding Sergeant Richard Harlan's conduct at a checkpoint, witnessed and streamed. We will hear testimony. One by one, speakers droned. Civil rights advocates described harassment patterns. Deacon tried to spin the story about community service, but the crowd hissed him down. Lane described Tasha's flat tire, the bulb replacement, the asthma attack. Then, Miss Monroe. Her legs shook as she walked to the microphone. Cameras clicked. She drew a breath. That night, my son and I were stopped. What should have been a routine fix, it turned into something else. I was searched without cause. My child's medical need was ignored. And then, Sergeant Harlan asked me if I had a last request. Gasps rippled. Council members leaned forward. Reporters scribbled. She continued, voice steadying. I thought he meant it as a threat, but when I asked to fix the bulb, he let me. When I asked to be escorted home, he did. When I asked for nothing more than safety, he provided it. I don't understand his reasons. I only know my son and I are alive tonight because of what happened after those words. Whispers filled the chamber. Some faces skeptical, others surprised. The chairwoman nodded gravely. Thank you, Miss Monroe. She stepped back, pulse wild, eyes flicking to Hawk. For the first time, his gaze wasn't steel. It was something else, something that looked dangerously close to conflict. Then the chairwoman said, Sergeant Harlan, do you wish to respond? Every head turned. Hawk rose, adjusting his uniform, walking to the microphone with heavy steps. The chamber hushed to a pin drop. And in that silence, Tasha knew, whatever came from his mouth next could either damn them all or change everything. The chamber air was electric, 100 breaths held in unison. Hawk adjusted the microphone with a hand that looked steady, but his jaw muscle ticked. His eyes moved across the council, then to the crowd, before landing on Tasha. He held her gaze for one unsettling moment, then began. On the night in question, I conducted a lawful checkpoint. His voice was flat, official. Vehicle had defects. Driver had an outstanding citation. I followed procedure. Boos rippled through the crowd. The chairwoman banged her gavel. Order, Hawk continued, tone unchanged. But then the situation changed. A child with a medical condition needed care. A mother asked for requests. He paused, throat working around the word. I granted them. Murmurs surged. One councilman leaned forward. Why phrase it as a last request, Sergeant? That sounds more like an execution than enforcement. The question hit like a hammer. Reporters scribbled. Cameras zoomed in. Hawk's mask cracked for the first time. He exhaled slowly. Because, 3 years ago, at another checkpoint, a car ran the cones. I stopped it. Driver panicked, reached for the glove box. I thought it was a weapon. I fired. There was a boy in the back seat, 7 years old. Asthmatic, his voice faltered, then dropped to a low rasp. He never made it to the hospital. His mother's last words to me were, if you won't let me live, at least let me fix his seatbelt, and I didn't. Gasps filled the chamber. Lane looked stricken. Even the council sat stunned. Hawk gripped the microphone tighter. Since that night, every stop, every citation, I ask, do you have a last request? Because one mother didn't get hers, and I can't change that. The silence was heavy, suffocating. Finally, the chairwoman asked, so when Ms. Monroe asked to fix her taillight, When she asked to be escorted home, what did you see? Hawk's gaze locked with Tasha's again. For once, no steel, no cruelty, only a weary honesty. I saw a second chance, not for me, for her, for the kid, for the request I never granted before. The chamber erupted, some voices furious, others moved to tears. A man shouted, "Resign." Another cried, "At least he admitted it." Cameras flashed like lightning. The chairwoman pounded the gavel again. "Enough, Sergeant, step back." Hawk did, face unreadable once more. Later, as the hearing adjourned and the crowd spilled out into the storm of microphones and flashing bulbs, Tasha slipped through the throng. Jaden's picture clutched in her wallet, her heart unsteady. On the courthouse steps, reporters swarmed. "Miss Monroe, do you believe Sergeant Harlan should keep his badge?" She paused, rain misting her cheeks, cameras burning into her. Behind her, Hawk exited the building in handcuffs, flanked by internal affairs officers. He didn't resist. He didn't speak. He just looked at her one last time, as though asking a question without words. Tasha drew a breath, held Jaden's memory close, and spoke into the sea of lenses. "I don't know what he deserves, but I know what my son deserved that night. A chance to breathe. And he got it." The crowd hushed, those words cutting sharper than any headline. By evening, the story led every broadcast. Racist officer confronted a black single mom at a checkpoint. What he did with her last wish changed everything. And though debates raged on, justice, reform, forgiveness, the truth was undeniable. One mother's courage, one child's fragile breath, and one officer's fractured conscience had collided to expose a system, to shake a city, and to leave everyone speechless.